Thank you all for joining us for today's Friday Forum. My name is Sarah Owsley. I'm the Advocacy Director here at Empower Missouri, and we're very glad to have all of you joining and a really phenomenal speaker joining us today to explain some more concepts for us. So I generally want to give folks a minute or two to kind of come in, but I was a little slow on the admit all button. So we're already a couple minutes after the hour, so I'll probably go ahead and get started. Here's our agenda for today. We always open these forums with an opportunity for some networking. This really started definitely during the pandemic when we were not talking to each other very often, but I still find that it's a fun opportunity to meet some new advocates from around the state that you may not know before from your work, or you haven't had a chance to interact with in a while. And so we're going to send you into breakout rooms here in just a minute for about 4 minutes, and then we'll bring you back. It's not a big time commitment. And certainly if you want to just sit there in silence, you're welcome to do that as well. Then our topic for today is TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, is one of the most misunderstood programs, federal programs, and one of the most evidence-based and effective. So we're going to talk about that. We've got a special guest, Diana, from the Center on Budget and Policy Priority, who's going to share some information with us about that. Then I'm going to talk, keeps being refiled here in Missouri to limit cash access and change the TANF rules and why we don't think that's a good idea. So we're going to talk about that. Then we'll do our survey and you'll all be out of here in just 1 hour. All right, I think everybody's pretty much back, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to actually turn over the reins here to our really lovely guest speaker. So excited for you all. Anybody at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities is great, and Diana especially. So I'm going to introduce her, and then I'm going to stop my slides and let her take hers, and we'll get going. So we have Diana Azevedo McCaffrey today. She's a policy analysis and income security team. Before joining the center, she worked at the Gender and Public Policy Department at Columbia University, San Francisco Department on the Status of Women as a Public Policy Fellow, and NARAL Pro-Choice America. Her work primarily focuses on examining temporary assistance for needy families, or TANF, and the social policy landscape with an equity lens to advance policies that better serve women and their families. Her research areas include child support policy, improving TANF for survivors of domestic violence, TANF spending, and the intersection of cash assistance and reproductive justice. I can read, I promise. Diana holds a master's degree in social policy and gender and public policy from the School of International and Public Affairs at Columbia University, and a BA in sociology and English literature from the University of California, Berkeley. So I'm going to stop my screen share. You should have the ability to share your screen there, Diana. Let me know if you have any problems.
Okay, thank you so much, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
I'm going to attempt to do this. Okay. Okay, are you seeing the slides?
We are. We also see your notes in the next slide.
I do not want that.
It is in presenter screen. No,
okay.
Yeah. You give away all your secrets that way.
Do you see just the slides now?
Yep, that's what you want.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks so much for having me today. It's nice to be among you, and happy Friday as well. I hope everyone is looking forward to a 3-day weekend. I myself am quite excited. So today I'm going to talk about TANF in Missouri. It's going to be kind of TANF 101, but I'm still going to be throwing a lot of information at you, so I apologize in advance. But we're gonna start off with a bit of TANF history and basics. We're then going to talk about a bit about some specific TANF policies and what they are in Missouri. And then we're going to talk a bit about how to go about identifying opportunities for advocacy in TANF. So before diving into what TANF is, I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of cash assistance to give some historical context to TANF. So the beginnings of cash assistance in the United States were Mother's Pension programs, and they were established at the state and local levels. Mothers' pension programs reflected traditional ideas about marriage and gender roles. When caseworkers determined that a woman's conduct did not align with these expectations, they were deemed unworthy of aid. And white children of widowed mothers, who made up most of the recipients of these programs, were seen as deserving because they lost their breadwinning father through no fault of the mother. However, children of unwed mothers of any race were usually excluded, and children of Black mothers were also largely excluded, regardless of whether the mother was widowed, abandoned, unwed, and regardless of economic need as well. And the idea that only families meeting specific criteria deserve government support as well. Okay, let me start over. The idea that only families meeting specific criteria deserve government support, as well as the systematic exclusion of Black families, dates back to the beginnings of cash assistance. And these ideas influenced the creation of aid to families with dependent children, which was the program, the cash assistance program prior to TANF. It was established in 1935. And then these ideas also influenced the creation of TANF. So when we look at TANF policy, you'll notice that harmful narratives about Black families are really baked in, as well as other themes like deservingness, like poverty being a result of an individual's failures rather than the result of structural problems. These ideas really influence the program and its policies, and ultimately they result in an inadequate system for all families, regardless of race or ethnicity. So given this racist legacy of TANF and cash assistance more broadly, we've come to adopt a framework to analyze the TANF program with the goal to move it in an anti-racist direction. So this framework is called the Black Women Best Framework. It was developed by Janelle Jones, who's now chief economist at the Department of Labor. And consistent with this framework, we believe that if we redesign TANF so that it centers the needs of those who've been most excluded and exploited economically in our history, then that will result in TANF policy that more adequately helps all families that are struggling to afford the basics. So that leads us to TANF today, and I'll start a bit by explaining TANF's funding structure and how states spend their TANF dollars. So TANF is funded by two different funding streams. The first is a federal block grant, which has been the same since 1996. So it's lost a lot of value due to inflation. And then there's the second funding stream, which is state dollars. And this is called the maintenance of effort requirement. But it's important to note that these two streams of funding are fungible in a sense. And something that will come up a lot in this presentation is that there's significant flexibility in the TANF program, in the sense that states have a lot of flexibility around how they spend their TANF dollars, and states have more flexibility to do good things than they often understand or use. And states are supposed to design their TANF spending to meet these four purposes. So as you can see, these goals are quite flexible and open to interpretation, especially number 2, 3, and 4. And with number 1, states have flexibility to define what constitutes needy. So some states has defined needy to mean, pretty moderate income levels, which causes their TANF dollars to not be super targeted toward the lowest income families. Also note that it's my opinion that especially 2, 3, and 4 are quite antiquated, and they're not representative of many families today, and also just present quite a narrow viewpoint of what a family is and what they should be. One of the key takeaways about when it comes to TANF spending is that states spend far less on basic assistance. So this is the monthly cash benefits that families receive than they did during TANF's first year. So this pie chart really shows how total TANF spending on basic assistance has just really shrunk over the years. And then at the same time, spending on basic assistance varies significantly by state. Missouri has one of the lowest percentages of basic assistance spending. In 2020, Missouri spent 6% of their total TANF funds, so this is federal and state funds, on basic assistance. And instead of spending funds on basic assistance, TANF funding is going to many different areas. So in Missouri, the biggest ticket areas are child welfare services, and then a category called other services, other areas, which constitutes a range of programs and services. So while a lot of these investments are worthy and important, states should use funding sources other than federal and state TANF funds for them, especially when states are spending so little on providing cash to the lowest income families. And I also think there's something to be said about spending a lot on child welfare and not on cash assistance, because there's a wealth of research that shows how anti-poverty measures that increase family income and help parents better meet their children's needs are linked to reduced reporting to child welfare services and a decrease in foster care placements. And this is because most families that are involved in the child welfare system and most children that are removed from their parents' care are removed because CPS investigates and finds neglect, which is often indistinguishable from how poverty manifests in a family's life. So if states were instead to redirect their funds toward increasing families' income, this would not only be better for families, but also a more efficient use of funding. So what this means for families is that cash benefits in most states are inadequate to meet their basic needs. Benefits in nearly every state are below half of the federal poverty line, and Missouri has one of the lowest benefit levels at $292 for a single parent family of 3, which hasn't been raised since the start of TANF. And access to the program also largely depends on where a family lives. So we have developed this TANF, it's called the TANF to poverty ratio, to examine how many families living in poverty are able to access TANF and then how this changes over time. So a low TANF to poverty ratio shows that TANF is only reaching a small share of families with children. And this has led to there's a lot of variation among state TPRs, and these disparities regionally often reflect racial inequities in TANF. So compared to white children, Black children are much more likely to live in states with low TPRs. Missouri's TPR is 11, so that means the TANF program in Missouri is reaching 11 out of 100 families with children living in poverty. And federal law requires that states meet a work participation rate for all families. So families lose their benefits if they don't comply with this requirement, and the severity of the sanction varies by state. But states have flexibility to set their own policies in terms of who must participate in work activities and also what counts as work. So there is more flexibility here than is often realized, and most states don't take advantage of the flexibility offered. So I'm going to go into some specific TANF policies and what they are in Missouri. And there's different places you can find out more about your state's TANF policies. So one place to look is the TANF state plan, which is linked here. Another place to look is the TANF statute. I couldn't find it, but I'm sure many of you would be better able to find it on your end. There are also resources that look at all 50 states. There's the Welfare Rules Database, where you can look up the different policies in different states. And then we also have a lot of resources on our website as well. So these are the main policy buckets of TANF that impact a family's access to cash. So in terms of the financial policies, there's a lot of flexibility for states to define what needy means, and the benefit levels, and then other financial policies that impact eligibility for TANF, like asset limits. And there's also room for flexibility with time limits for cash benefits. So federal law sets a 60-month time limit with federal funds. So that means states can expand the time limit if they use state dollars. And the time limits vary state to state. So there is flexibility there that is often not utilized by states. There are also eligibility exclusions. So states have quite a bit of flexibility here too. These can consist of drug felon bans, family cap policies, which Missouri does not have one, but they function to deny additional cash assistance to any child born to a family already participating in TANF. So they really are a social and reproductive control tool that discriminates against only a subset of families with low incomes, for having children. And then, of course, there are also work requirements, which, as I said before, states have more flexibility here than they often realize. States can expand their range of work activities to include education and training, and also use sanctions that are less severe when a family does not comply with the work requirement. There are also behavioral requirements, and states have flexibility to set or not set these. So some examples are a reduction in benefits if a child does not meet school attendance standards, and then this one, restrict TANF EBT. This is something we'll be talking about a bit later. There are also behavioral requirements that some states have around drug screening and testing. And then there's some other policies to consider when you're thinking about your TANF program. So there's something called the family violence option, and it's designed to allow states greater flexibility to waive program requirements and providing services to domestic violence survivors. Missouri has implemented the family violence option, but an issue with this policy pretty much countrywide is that despite high incidence of DV among TANF participants, few families are actually able to access the program. So that's something to look into, why that is the case in your state. There's also TANF and child support, which is a whole other rabbit hole, and it's an area that we've recently taken on. Basically, some of you probably already know this, but when custodial families apply to TANF, they're required to participate with child support enforcement, and they also have to sign over their rights to child support to the state. So what this means is they're required to establish a support order with the court and help track down the non-custodial parent. And then when the non-custodial parent pays child support, that support is kept by the state instead of going to their child. So the idea there is that this is repayment for providing the family with cash assistance. So pretty egregious stuff, but states have flexibility to instead pass through child support to TANF families. There are various options and ways that states can do this. Missouri currently does not pass through funds to TANF participants. So that's something to explore as well, because it is a way to get more direct cash to families. And looking at what other states are doing is helpful when you're assessing your TANF programs and what policy opportunities you may pursue to make your program better. So I compared Missouri of some policies in Missouri to what's happening in Ohio and Indiana, because somewhat similar political landscapes. So this chart has some financial policies as well as what the limit is on benefits, and also what the most severe work sanction is. And then I included another chart that consists of eligibility and behavioral requirements. The last three rows really reflect how cash assistance is a reproductive justice issue. Should note that abortion is completely banned in Missouri, as most of you probably know, and it's banned at 22 weeks and later in Ohio and Indiana. And pregnant people are not eligible for benefits in Missouri or Indiana. And all three states fund crisis pregnancy centers with TANF dollars. So for those who don't know, crisis pregnancy centers, I prefer to call them anti-abortion centers, because what they generally do is their bottom line is to dissuade people from choosing or accessing abortion, often using coercive tactics. So I'll touch a little bit on how to go about identifying opportunities for advocacy in your state. So one of the main things to ask yourself is, what and who determines how your TANF policies are implemented? Are the policies in the statute or regs? Are they determined by state or county administrators? Especially if you're dealing with a conservative landscape, administrative action might be your best route. And there's often more that can be done administratively than you think. And these are some other things to ask yourself when you're developing your agenda, in terms of who could be part of your coalition, what the best approach is, which policies, if you were to go about changing them, would have the most impact for families. And we are here to help you at any stage of your TANF work. So technical assistance is a lot of what we do on my team. Our work ranges from answering quick questions over email or more involved support over a meeting. We can develop messaging and talking points, and we can even be present at to provide testimony at hearings. And we also have several different advocate groups. So these groups are really meant to be a space for collective learning. And if you're interested in joining any of them, please let me know. They're open to anyone, regardless of how much you know about TANF or child support. And I included some links to resources. I'll be sure to send these slides to Sarah so that she can send them out afterwards, so you can access all these things. And that's it. Thank you so much for letting me throw all this information at you. I know it was a lot. My email is up there if you want to reach out at any point, or if you're interested in joining the group, the advocate groups as well. So happy to take any questions.
Diana, thank you so much. That was so very much, and I appreciate it a lot. We definitely have some time for some questions. I have a very short presentation as well, but there's plenty of space for questions right now. I would love to have those. There was some discussion about some changes that were made in the last several years to the TANF program in Missouri from 2015 and more recently as well, I believe, and that we have significantly limited the number of TANF recipients in Missouri, which is completely accurate. Thank you, JMO. We are, as Diana mentioned, one of the lowest participating states. Yeah, so folks can come off mute if they'd like, or type questions into the chat box, either way, as I digest. I certainly was aware of the sort of women's rights and those sorts of inclusions about, family planning, and one of their goals being the preservation of a two-parent family, which is relatively, first of all, ridiculous, but also kind of ironic, since 90% of TANF receiving households in Missouri are single moms. So doesn't work, but let's keep trying to do that, right? Really ignoring a lot of other sort of social factors.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that said very well.
Yeah. Good, excellent. Well, I'll go ahead and start my presentation, and that probably will shake loose a few questions or thoughts from other folks. We're going to talk about a bill that has been moving through the Missouri legislature several times for many years in a row now. We have Christine Woody, our food security policy manager, on the call as well to help answer any questions. Hopefully you all can now see my screen, where you will see a few of the facts that Diana just shared, right? Only citizens who work and have children are eligible for TANF in the state of Missouri. 90% of those receiving households are single moms, as I just said, and 75% of them are children, which really shows that most TANF households in Missouri, TANF receiving households, are single moms with multiple children. If that parent has a young child under the age of 6, they have to show that they have worked 20 hours per week. And if they are over the age of 6, they have to show that they are working full time or they are no longer eligible. It is time limited to 45 months, as Diana mentioned, an asset limit of $1,000. And the average allocation in Missouri is $223. Absolutely not a well-utilized program here in Missouri. Fortunately, we've made it very difficult for households that will benefit from being able to receive that assistance. So House Bill 338 is the bill that this year is really dealing with or proposing some changes to how TANF operates in Missouri. As you heard Diana say, right, Missouri has a lot of control over how the program is administered here in our state. I just realized I still have you pinned, Diana. That must feel weird. I just took it off. Sorry about that. Control dollars are administered in our state. And as a reminder, right, these are not state dollars. So we pick people off the program or preclude families from being able to take use of these benefits, it doesn't save any state money. We are harming our neighbors to really no financial benefit for the state. And I think it would be pretty difficult to prove any type of other benefit that the state receives. So the proposed changes in this House bill would limit the ability to purchase pornography with EBT. And this is just from the bill summary. We're going to break down each of these sort of claims in just a moment and compare them to what current law is. So the summary says it would limit the ability to purchase pornography with EBT, add pornography to the list of things that are prohibited, establish periods of time may be banned from receiving TANF if they purchase those prohibited items, and prohibit Missouri TANF recipients from using ATMs to receive cash. For folks who are not familiar, you can currently use your EBT card if you are a TANF receiving household to take out, some of those benefits in cash so that you can, use it however. The argument is then that households might be using that money to purchase prohibited items, which honestly may happen, right? We don't know for sure what families do with the cash that they have, whether that comes from TANF or from other resources. But that doesn't mean that we should prohibit their access entirely, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. The language would require that the state apply for a waiver if needed, which is what the bill actually says, which we definitely would need a waiver if we were going to do that. So we're going to break down each of those claims now. The first would limit the ability to purchase pornography with EBT. The current law already prohibits the purchase of alcoholic beverages, lottery tickets, or tobacco products, or for any item the department determines by rule is primarily marketed for or used by adults 18 and older and is not in the best interest of the child or household. I believe pornography fits very well under that description. I am not sure that we need a specific calling out of pornography, though certainly I don't think many advocates would argue for that change, right? It's already legally prohibited, right? We already have, said that that's the law. I don't think advocates would care that much. If you wanted to add pornography to the list, that's fine, right? But it is already in the list. It's absolutely already in the list. The second, it claims to establish period of time recipients may be banned from TANF if they purchase prohibited items. There are two penalties currently written into Missouri law. There's a penalty for individuals. If an eligible recipient of TANF or SNAP assistance makes the purchase in violation, they shall reimburse the Department of Social for such purchase, right? For folks who have never used an EBT card, when you go through the sort of like checkout line, the vendor you, here is your total that is EBT eligible, and here is your total that is sometimes these violations could absolutely happen in error or happen because the vendor or the store that you're shopping in hasn't properly identified whether or not this item is eligible for EBT or TANF. And so the store is also penalized, right? The proprietor or store owner who knowingly accepts EBT cards in violation could be punished with a fine of not more than $500 for the first offense, and then higher fines each time. I would very much venture to say that households that have gone through all the hoops to receive TANF, right? There's a very slim amount of folks who are eligible in the state of Missouri, and if you have done all of the work, including proving that you're working in order to continue to receive TANF, folks are probably it for things that they don't want to, and many of these violations are probably completely on accident by that purchaser, right? They are not intentionally often trying to purchase things, and I think most likely there's some data that like alcohol probably would be the highest, right? Because they are supposed to separate out those purchases, but certainly the store should have the responsibility to identify what items are SNAP or TANF eligible and which items are not EBT eligible. So both folks face a penalty. I want to look though at the balance of these punishments, right? Store owners, for small businesses, a $500 fee might be a pretty significant fee, and certainly reason enough to dissuade them from potentially fostering or allowing these violations. But for an individual to completely be prohibited from receiving TANF is really significant, right? That $200 a month, if you're a TANF receiving family, that $200 a month is like a pretty big portion of your income, and is really important for your ability to provide for your household. And so being banned entirely seems like a very significant punishment for something that really could often happen completely by accident. Finally, the House Bill 330 prohibits Missouri TANF recipients from using the ATM to receive any cash, and the language says we should apply for a waiver. To our knowledge, and the Center on Budget and Policy Priority, we've been in conversation with them for 5 years now about this language, right? No state has ever received a waiver to be able to do that. So we don't believe that that's even something that we would be allowed to do by the federal government. And certainly there is not precedence of any states around us. Many folks like to point to states who are around us. Kansas, for example, limited cash access for TANF families. That language was never put into effect for 2 reasons. First, they couldn't get a waiver. And the second, even if the waiver were to be granted, Missouri would have to recall all of our current cards because that vendor is a federal, right? And so they are following the federal standards, which require, as you can see above here, that folks have access to cash with minimal fees and as often as possible, right? And so that vendor will not allow Missouri to limit cash access. So we would have to find a statewide vendor to reissue all of the EBT cards and manage the entire EBT system for TANF and SNAP recipients in our state, all at our cost. Missouri taxpayers would have to pay to do all of this work to theoretically limit the number of folks on TANF who may be using that cash to circumvent the system and maybe purchase something that is in the list of prohibited items. It's important to note that TANF does not have a high rate of abuse. There is not proof that this is a problem that regularly, this seems to be a solution in search of a problem, and it's a very extremely expensive solution for Missouri taxpayers that really harms low-income households and really, like, to be frank, right? It's low-income single moms. This is who this is going to target and who is going to harm the most. Not every TANF receiving household is a single mom, but many of them are in the state of Missouri, and we really need to keep that in mind as we look at who we're going to punish, right, in this process. Good. So often folks, right, are going to ask themselves, what can we do? What's the next thing? So here's a couple of action items for you. Join an Empower Missouri coalition. We meet twice a month during the legislative session, which we have just started. We have a coalition for affordable housing, food security, justice. Our food security coalition is really one who takes the lead on our TANF access and SNAP access issues. And so if that is a particularly important issue for you, that's a great place for you to show up. Sign up for our newsletter. We will monitor this bill and all bills moving through the legislature that impact people in poverty and people who struggle. And we will keep you in the loop. We'll let you know when it's time to do something, if it's time to, right? You can find our other upcoming events, including information about our week of action and our in-person day of action at empowermissouri.org. And now I'm going to send you out with about 5 minutes to please take our survey before you leave. So I'm going to link that in the chat box again. Please take our survey. Let us know what you thought about today, how we can improve, other topics you'd like to hear from, and help us report to our fund the things that we promised them we would do with the money that they gave us, right? Going to stay in the room. Diana's going to stay around if you have any other questions as well. We won't close the room until 1 o'clock, but we certainly want you to take that survey. Well, Diana, thank you again so much for your time. Thanks for everybody who kind of hung in there after filling out their survey and answering questions with us. I appreciate it. It was great to see all of you. And we will be back the second Friday. We changed it up on you, second Friday of the month next month as well. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day. I'm going to kick you out. Thanks, Diana.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, everyone.